Go. All right. Professor Glenn Antizzo, who's the professor of political science, Mississippi College. Good morning, sir. It's good to have you.
Good morning, Paul.
Forgive us on that break there. We had the computer just went on strike. We negotiated real quick. We got the union leaders together, and we got it back real quick there. So just to let you know. Man, I asked this question, and I said, we got to get the good professor in here because it is really weird with the border, the impeachment of Mayorkas, some other things kind of taking precedent there, and these wars that are going on and on and on are just kind of fading away. So up to date, let's first of all take the Hamas and Israeli conflict. Where are we now with that one, and is there any end in sight?
No, there doesn't appear to be any end in sight. If anything, it looks like Israel's fighting against Hamas in Gaza is obviously an existential conflict for them. But on the other hand, for us, it's beginning to look like two parallel events are going on. There is the fighting in Israel between Israel and Hamas, and then there is a larger conflict that seems to be developing between the United States and Iran, or I should say more broadly between Western civilization and Iran. You've got the Iranians who are, I think, moving chess pieces right now to improve their position in that part of the world, to establish themselves as a regional superpower in a sense. And I'm beginning to wonder, especially with a lot of that, the meetings. There was talk about the Iranians had held meetings with Hamas, a few weeks before the conflict started, and I got to wonder if for Hamas, obviously this is something they wanted to do, but for Iran, I wonder if that was the first chess piece being moved in a much larger game.
Well, is it possible all of the players here, because you have a defined territory. I understand the tunnels and everything else. Right. For geographically, we're talking about that area. Haven't they been able to canvass most of that? Do they have control of most of that? And if that's the case, would some of the key players, be back in Iran or at Hezbollah or some other place?
Yeah, my understanding is that the leaders of Hamas are actually in Qatar in a really upscale hotel.
So they're not even there now.
Right. And the Israelis have, I think, pretty much largely effective control of the northern part of Gaza, and they're cleaning out that area. As a matter of fact, there was a report I saw this morning that said the Israelis are starting to flood the tunnels with seawater. Okay. And they're being careful to make sure that they don't do anything to destroy the water tables of fresh water underneath Gaza.
What about the hostages?
There's supposed to be some sort of a deal that's being worked out right now, but the demands that Hamas are making as the cost of a ceasefire are that Israel withdraw all forces from Gaza and that they release thousands of jailed fighters. And Netanyahu has said that that's totally unacceptable. That's way too high a price. It's clear that what Hamas wants to do is slowly dole the prisoners, the hostages out in a way to continue to buy time for themselves, to reinforce their position, restock themselves with ammunition, and get ready to continue the fight. And it seems to me, in my observations, that it's always the losing side that asks for the ceasefire.
Yes. Please stop it. If younger generations wanted any validation to weakness in office in America, means these things happen. I played a cut yesterday when Joe Biden was on the campaign trail saying things like, we're really worried about this novice named Donald Trump because this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's going to get us into a war with Iran. And what other validation do you need to know that this guy is not the person that should be sitting in the Oval Office when the peace accords and everything else that we had under the Trump administration? But just to give you an idea, here's one of the cuts during a press conference of just how out of kilter this is.
At what point does the president then cut off the money to Iran by stopping or reducing their benefit from oil sales?
I just don't have anything to share on that particular thing.
That's the answer. What aggravates me is that the press doesn't push back more. Mm-hmm. That's the official statement. I just don't have anything to say. But they're still making a heck of a lot of money doing what they want to do as far as Iran is concerned, as far as oil. And don't forget, the worst deal ever cut, where we gave them the usage of $6 billion, and they are using it one way or the other.
Yeah.
$6 billion, released 5 bad guys, all for 5 hostages that we had.
Yeah, no, and it follows an earlier precedent when we were trying to entice them into a nuclear deal, and all this money that we had frozen in the United States was provided back to the Iranian government with interest in the form of uncirculated, freshly printed Swiss francs that couldn't be traced. And anybody with a set of eyes and a functioning brain would know that this money was going to be used for purposes that were going to come back and bite us on the posterior. There was an uptick in terrorism almost immediately in both cases.
That is why it is so important for the younger generation to understand these things have consequences. Consequences when you vote for the wrong people. All of a sudden, it's at your doorstep, and homelessness and graft and everything else. Elections have consequences. On the Ukrainian situation, there was a story a couple of days ago. Employees from a Ukrainian arms firm conspired with the defense ministry officials to embezzle $40 million of taxpayer money in America. That money was earmarked to buy 100,000 mortar shells for the war with Russia. The SBU said last weekend, 5 people have been charged, 1 person detained. Nobody's been found guilty yet, though. The investigation comes as the Kyiv attempts to clamp down on corruption in a bid to speed up the membership to the European Union and NATO. And I think most of them understand that if Trump gets in, that's not a possibility.
Yeah, no, that was a shock. It was something that evidently broke in December, and the story is just coming to light now. And it couldn't come at a worse time for the Biden administration, because here you are right now trying to get extra aid for Ukraine, extra aid for Israel, and you're tying it to the border in order to get Republicans to go on. But the accusations that have been made against the Ukrainian government for, about 2 decades now is that this government, while democratic, is also, in many respects, almost a kleptocracy, government by thieves, in the sense that you've got, and rampant corruption going on, and this being a serious case. Again, the country is involved, I hate to use the word again, but in an existential crisis. It's fighting for its survival. And you've got these people that have put themselves before their nation. And these are people that are, guardians of the nation's defense. These are people in the defense ministry. Matter of fact, one of the guys implicated was a former member of parliament who also ran for president in 2004. And what does that what does that say? It doesn't just give additional credence to Republican objections to sending additional aid to Ukraine. But if I'm a Ukrainian and I've been asked to give my money and to send my sons to go fight, and I find out that people are profiteering and putting themselves before the interests of the nation. It almost makes you wonder if they'll find it worth fighting for.
Well, when you start talking about sons and Ukrainian, let's not forget it was a vice president, when he was still vice president, over there saying things like what he was going to do, what he's not going to do. And, of course, afterwards, that famous or infamous video where he basically says you need to fire the prosecutor. Why? Because the prosecutor was getting into some areas that Joe Biden and his son didn't want you to get into. So it's the problem is it so corrupt? And I mentioned this earlier, and I think it's a pretty good analogy. Almost like the MS-13 being rooted out by a new government that comes into power in Mexico, or in Sicily, the mafia.
Yeah.
Are they so historically, generationally corrupt that they're far from the pure right now as we have it, even with this one thing that has been outed? And another thing, too, on social media, Professor, we get all of these stories about the wife or the daughter of her nephew buying yachts or partying, going on vacation. I don't know if that's true or not, but it certainly doesn't help. We'll talk more about it. I want to go back to the Ukrainian thing, but just got to hear this because it's worth hearing more than once. Because people need to have a benchmark of what incompetency sounds like.
What I will say, obviously our deepest condolences go out, and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families who lost three folks who are military folks, who are brave, who are always fighting, who are fighting on behalf of this administration, of the American people. Obviously, more importantly, we lost those souls.
Fighting for this administration. Boy, she caught hell on social media, where people, especially some of the relatives of or people in the military, they were not fighting for this administration.
Right.
They were fighting for this country. But the problem is, you got to be expected when you call a press conference, and you're the spokesperson for the President of the United States of America. That's going to be the question that you're asked somewhere in a press conference. Does that sound like you are prepared at all?
No, it sounds like she's auditioning to be Vice President of the United States. Yeah, Kamala Harris could have given the same statement.
It's really, well, she probably wouldn't have stuttered as much. You wouldn't have understood the word salad, but she wouldn't have stuttered as much. Where are we now as far as the Ukrainian situation with Russia?
Well, it looks like it's stalling out. The offensive that was supposed to be, this summer and fall did not make the headway that they were hoping for. There have been some really, serious strikes on Russian facilities in Crimea, and they've done some damage. My understanding is that the fleet is, sort of pulling back from forward positions, which is good news for Ukraine. But in terms of the they have not been able. The goal was to break the land bridge and to separate Crimea from the rest of the occupied territory, but it hasn't happened. And there was a proposal a few months ago that may get some traction now. Polls that I've seen indicate there is a war weariness going on. During the Civil War here in the United States, what happened was, in a lot of cases, rich people paid to get out of the draft by having poor people go for them. And my understanding is that Zelensky, in August, fired all the officials in charge of military recruitment because, connected people were able to get out of conscription while people who were less able to do so were going. And so, obviously between that kind of scandal and, what you talked about in the last segment about shells being paid for but not delivered by a Ukrainian firm, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around why we are sending them money rather than sending them the arms ourselves.
That's what we were supposed to. That's what we were doing. In other words, we've learned this over and over, even from our delegation, that when they say we're sending them this and that, it's from our inventory,
right?
And then a contract goes out to to Ingalls or to whomever it happens to be to replace that in our inventory. But apparently money is part of this also.
But just going back to, what I was saying, I think that there's a war weariness that's beginning to set in. The people have given their best, better than the government probably deserves. Yeah. And as a result, there is a proposal on the table, and I think that the Ukrainian public, I'm seeing signs that maybe they're willing to take this kind of a deal, that you let Russia have the territory that they've taken. And you don't want to reward aggression, but the offset would be that the other 80% of Ukraine gets taken into NATO in order to provide them with a security guarantee.
I got to believe that China, because they powwowed, Putin and them were powwow, and I also Iran love this going on as far as getting for this conflict to continue. Because we are usurping a heck of a lot of our inventory with all of this armament being sent into the Ukraine, and also as far as Israel is concerned. Right. And now we're looking at, you got to be looking over the stockpile. Can we handle shock and awe in Iran?
Yeah,
and you got to wonder, number one, our recruiting is down miserable.
Right. There was also an article that I saw this week that said that because recruiting is down, that the military is starting to lower standards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, that's not going to be good for the country or for the people that are involved. If you are, unqualified physically to be in the military, and you're thrown, you volunteer because you're looking at it as a job or whatever. I mean, that's not good for you either. The sad thing is that even though our military is smaller than that of Russia or that of China, is that it's the best in the world because it's, we've held the military to high standards, and I hate to see the administration having to do this. And I also, I don't like how politicized the military seems like it's getting. General Milley seemed more like he was interested in making sure that the right pronoun was used in the military than he was in getting the guys ready to fight.
That was one of the disappointments, too, because during Barack Obama, the homosexuality thing, lesbian, all of that just exploded. And for the first time, when you had to have wokeism in a submarine under the water for that long, and then you had to add that to it, and then our illustrious former governor, Ray Mabus, being in charge there, and some things that were going on as far as just a woke culture in the Navy was just beyond. But I thought, and the reason I was disappointed is because I thought maybe with Joe Biden being such a man, look at his blonde leg hairs and everything, just such a manly man, maybe that would not be it, and first and foremost would be the strength of our military. But boy, it's just gone just the absolute opposite. Starting February 5th, which is around the corner, Denver is going to start limiting the number of days illegals can stay in the shelter. So I have no idea where they're going to go from there because they have an influx of even more coming in. We're talking 40,000 or more. They have in the sanctuary city, they have 40,000 migrants in Denver. It's changing the complexity of Denver.
Yeah, no, as a matter of fact, my understanding is that about 6 million people have been let in since
6 to 8, yeah.
Since Biden was president. Or to put it in context, that's twice the population of the state of Mississippi.
Yep.
And, here's something else. You talk about Denver limiting when people could be in shelters. Something that nobody has brought up is that Eric Adams in New York has been trying to limit when buses can be brought into the city in order to drop off migrants. Mm-hmm. Now, it is my understanding that Congress and Congress alone can limit and regulate interstate commerce. I cannot believe that nobody has called out Adams on this. By the way, New Jersey's been getting around it. The people are showing up in Newark, which is about 15 miles outside of Manhattan, and then putting them on commuter trains and PATH trains. PATH is a subway that runs across the Hudson River into Manhattan anyway.
There's some people, lawyers in both those cities, want to fine or file a lawsuit against the bus companies for doing this, which is kind of crazy. How do you look at this thing and explain the razor wire in the Rio Grande? Because the latest we heard this morning is when you look at what the Supreme Court actually said, they said that the Border Patrol could cut it. They did not say that they couldn't replace it.
Right.
As far as the National Guard.
Yeah, no, basically, in my opinion, the government is just absolutely abrogating its duty to defend its own territory. I mean, the entire idea of a nation state is that you claim a territory that you are going to defend against all claims, and you're just allowing people to come through this border. It's amazing that we're trying to help Ukraine and other countries defend their borders, but we won't defend our own.
Yeah, everything's upside down.
I think, in my opinion, I think Texas is trying to do the right thing if the federal government won't. And I don't understand why, what is the end game? I think you addressed this in an earlier segment before I got into the studio. I don't understand the end game. I mean, what is the point of allowing
it all leads to one thing. It just all leads to one, because you're putting your current base, which is eroding naturally, and now it's eroding even more. And your base out there is women, white women are not happy. African Americans are not happy. Latino Americans are not happy in the Hispanic population. So none of these people are really happy with you right now. Mm-hmm. So you got to bring in 17 or 18 million illegals and understand, here's what we're going to give you. And if the other guy gets in there and votes, you're going to go back to Venezuela. You're going to go back to Mexico. You're going to go back to China, et cetera, et cetera. And Mayorkas is the guy who's facilitated
Thanks
this.
to all of you for being here. There is an inescapable fact that all the American people know. Joe Biden and his administration have created a catastrophe on the border. The American people are demanding that we do something about it. We're trying. As you all well know, many months ago, the House Republican majority passed H.R. 2.
But that wasn't good enough because it would block the border, first of all. We'll continue that final segment with Glenn Antizzo, the president of political science, or the professor of political science, Mr. President, I'm sorry, Mississippi College.
To reverse the catastrophe that he used his executive authority to create. That's the fact. We've been trying for 9 months, longer, to reverse the damage that they've done. The president has refused to act. The Homeland Security Committee will take the next necessary step that's available to us, marking up and passing articles of impeachment for Secretary Mayorkas. He has presided over and helped usher in the largest illegal immigration catastrophe in our nation's history. It's not even close. He's made false statements to Congress and the American people, and he has handicapped law enforcement. Just last week, we received word that more than 302,000 illegal immigrants crossed our border in December alone. 302,000 in 1 month. It continues. But you know, that barely made headlines. Why? Because that's the new normal under Secretary Mayorkas' lack of leadership.
Don't you just get the feeling that the clock is ticking on another terrorist attack in this country?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've got people coming in, not just from Central and South America, but from all over
China.
the world. Yeah, no, I just saw a report the other day about how people are flying from China to Mexico, and then they've got like their own sort of private clubs that they go to where they, get to rest up for a few days, enjoy a few meals, and then make the rest of the trip in. And then I know you were talking about, the agencies giving out maps and directions. There was I saw something on Fox, I think it was last night, that showed that some guy had done a documentary where he actually went down to South America and then walked with the refugees up. And it was amazing how much help. This has turned into an industry. We've talked about economic development in Central America. Well, this is making a lot of people rich down there.
NGOs, the non-governmental organizations. I think some of this is also George Soros and people such as that are fomenting this because it's making us even weaker. But in any other period of time in American history, Professor, this would be a clear case of treason from the President of the United States of America, without a doubt.
Yeah, no, we don't use that word anymore. But I mean, again, it goes back to the question that I posed in the last segment. I mean, what is your purpose? I mean, explain to the American people why it is. I mean, nobody's asking him this question. Why is it so important for him that these people come across? I'd like to hear him give an answer to that. Or Corinne Jean-Pierre, if she's up to the task, ask her directly. What is the end game of this? What do you hope to get out of this? And somebody needs to reread the asylum laws in this country. You get asylum in this country if you have a reasonable fear that by staying in your country that you're going to be killed or imprisoned or tortured, for certain reasons. And the fact that you're not making enough money in your home country, or that you're in a bad relationship and you want to escape your abuser, those are horrible things, but those aren't reasons we give out asylum.
Like the Miranda script, it is on their on their free phone. Yeah. You read that. That's the first thing you read when you come across. By the way, that entire asylum thing is negated because you have to come through an approved checkpoint. As far as asylum is concerned. Right. So if you do it any other way, you're breaking the law.
Yeah, look, my understanding is that if you are a refugee, where you're supposed to stop is the first place you're safe. There is a country very far from here where that's possible, and that country is actually, I can think of two countries, Panama and more so Costa Rica, where these people, at least the ones coming out of Venezuela, who I do have some sympathy for because they are escaping a Marxist regime that seems bent on creating all hell in northern South America. They're talking They're talking about an invasion of Guyana, for crying out loud.
But what worries me, and my generation, and I think everybody else, to be honest with you, is the mentality, the way these new young people are coming into our country. It's a sense of entitlement. Mm-hmm. It's, you give me this, you give me that. Don't kick me out of this hotel. I've enjoyed being here, et cetera. And you're seeing them start their own gangs.
Yeah.
This is, I don't care if Trump does come in. It's almost like a body having stage 4 cancer. It is hard to get it out, no matter how good the doctor is.
Yeah. No, it's a shame that it's not that I think that they can't see it. It's that they won't see it. They don't want to see it. They know it's going on, and they're still allowing it to happen. And I think that they're hoping for some sort of political benefit. But what is going to surprise them is that a lot of Hispanics who live in the Rio Grande Valley or live in the border states are getting tired of this. They came here legally. Look, if you want to provide economic opportunities, then start up a robust guest worker program where people can come into the U.S. for 9 months and then go home. But not this.
There's so much corruption. The only other thing would be the pictures that they have of Joe Biden. But, I'd rather see those than see the border stay open.
People were chanting his name in those caravans.
Yes, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. I think I need some blood pressure medicine now since we've had this segment. But thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Paul. Always a pleasure.
Professor Glenn Antizzo from Mississippi.